Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. Welcome to It's Time for More Injury Funding, the podcast for all who want to learn about legal funding and its significance in the personal injury, workers' compensation, right share injuries, and many other types of law practice domains. I'm your host, Laura, founder and CEO of More Injury Funding, the legal funding counselors with passion for law, medicine, legal funding, and heart for all suffering individuals. In today's episode, I have an honor to be welcoming Jamie Seeker, founder and CEO of the Seeker solution based in Phoenix, Arizona, and serving clients nationwide. Jamie established Seeker Solution as a boutique business operations company in the US, providing customizable tools for entrepreneurs and business leaders to achieve success through hands-on strategic solutions. Seeker Solution aims to personalize coaching and development for clients, fostering personal growth, achieving visions, meeting objectives, and driving business growth. Today, we'll dive deep into the real world challenges and breakthroughs of building successful law practices. We're going behind the scenes of what it really takes to build a thriving personal injury firm beyond just winning cases. We are talking about the system, strategy, and culture that power sustainable growth, retain top talent, and keep your firm running like a business without burning out your people. Whether you are a personal injury attorney scaling your firm or a legal ops pro looking to tighten operations, this episode is packed with insightful insights you can act on right away. Stay tuned till the very end. As you know, the pop-up question is coming up soon. Jamie, welcome to It's Time for More Injury Finding podcast.
Hi, Laura. Thank you so much for having me.
It's so great to have you with us today. We met very recently, actually, a few months back, because of Betty Aquino of Women in Leadership by Betty on a Zoom call, and then in real life in New Orleans last month. And I knew right away that you have a true magic about you, and you take your business very seriously. And as a business owner myself, to a business owner, I would like to ask you a million questions, but we will stick to with just personal injury for the purpose of this podcast. You have worked with many personal injury firms up until now. So let me start by asking, what are the biggest operational challenges personal injury firms face as they grow, and how they can structure their teams and systems to keep up without burning out their people?
That's a great question. Um, what I see most often with firms is that the very thing that actually makes them successful early on, let's say the attorney's drive, their relationships, their personal touch, that can sometimes be exactly what starts to hold them back as they grow. So a lot of firms hit that point where everything still runs through the attorney, right? They're the ones making every single decision, they're managing every single client, they're signing every single check. At some point, that model just it doesn't scale. So it's not sustainable. It leads to burnout for them, not only for them, but also for their team as well. So I'd say the first mindset shift as your lawyer owner needs to shift from not just being a lawyer, but also being a CEO. So that means putting structure in place, clearly defining, I'd say, roles and responsibilities, job descriptions, those kinds of things, but also expectations. So everyone knows who owns what. I mean, you'd be surprised how many firms don't have clear accountability for things like client communication or follow up. And I think that leads to a lot of frustration, falling through the cracks, stuff like that. So I'd say once that structure's there, it's not just about the systems, right? Or you kind of can move on to the systems. You don't just buy more software. It's about consistent, repeatable processes. So you can focus on building that system itself. So having a standardized way to handle intake, using automated workflows so nothing gets missed, stuff like that. So when we do that with clients, it saves time, it reduces errors, it allows attorneys to focus on what they actually went to law school for, and that's practicing law, building relationships, that kind of stuff. And then finally, you can't talk about growth without talking about culture. So I think that retaining great people, it requires communication, it requires development. recognition, things like that. So I think simple things like weekly check-ins, celebrating wins, helping people see how their work impacts their clients. I think those are things that build loyalty. It keeps the teams energized. So really firms thrive. That thrive are the ones that run like business. They build structure around their people, use the systems to support, not replace them, but they also create that culture that keeps everyone aligned with the mission of helping clients and heal, moving forward.
That totally makes sense. Jamie, when should a growing personal injury firm start thinking about building internal systems? And
Mm.
what's a common mistake firms usually make when doing it too early or too late?
Yeah, that's tricky, right? I think timing really does make or break how well a system works inside a firm. So that's hard to tell. I'd say what we tell our clients is this. Start thinking about systems like the moment you feel that things are slipping through the cracks. So when you find yourself repeating the same instructions over and over again, that could be a red flag or a signal to tell you. You don't have to have it all mapped out right away, but that's when you'd want to start documenting what you're working on, what's working, what's not, where you find or need that consistency there. I think the mistake I see a lot of times is I mean, really just waiting too long. If they grow fast, they hire quickly. They think they'll get into the systems later. I think the problem is by then everyone's doing things their own way. And so there's really no baseline on how cases move through the firm, how communication happens, or how quality is measured. Then when they finally try to put that system in place, it feels like they're trying to fix the plane while it's flying, right? It's a lot harder to do it that way. So I'd say on the flip side, building systems too early can also create problems because, especially if you haven't worked it out, right? If the process hasn't really been tested yet, or you've seen, we've seen some firms start they spend too much time and money on some fancy case management setup or automation tool, and that's just way before they're ready for it. So you got to look for a workflow that actually fits your team, and then you don't want to rebuild it then if you start too soon. So I think that sweet spot is when your workload and your team size start to stretch your current capacity and you're feeling like, I don't know that I can take on much more, then let's start being proactive and looking at designing a system that reflect how you want your business to function, not just how you're surviving through it in that day, in that moment, right? So I think it's also worth saying that systems don't have to be rigid. They can grow with you. So the best ones to create are the ones that give you freedom, clarity, not a whole bunch of red tape that you're locked into. So they can help your team move faster, more confidently, because everyone knows the how behind the why, what they're doing, what they're doing.
When we talk about systems, do you mean playbook? Like, what is systems for those who don't know?
Well, a system could just be as simple as something that you do every day, a
Mhm.
repeatable task. So the way to systematize that is to standardize it across maybe multiple people doing something. So a system could be a program, it could be your technology and platforms that you use to manage all of that. But it could just simply be hey, step one, two, and three. This is a system. This is what we do every single day, and everyone does it the same way. So it's really as simple or as detailed as it needs to be, but really just based on your size and your team and what your needs are.
Okay, that makes sense. And what role does technology play in building a scalable personal injury practice today? And how do
Mm.
you evaluate what's truly worth investing in?
Yeah, that's a good question because there's a lot out there, right? So I think technology in this day and age actually plays a pretty big role. It's a huge role, especially when you're scaling your practice. But I don't think that's the starting point. I think it's the support system. So I always tell owners, don't chase the latest, coolest tool, right? Build the right foundation first, because if your internal structure and processes aren't solid, even the best software isn't going to automate your chaos. So I think the real purpose of technology is to create clarity, it's to create consistency, things like case management systems, intake automation, uh, document tracking, client communication tools. Those can make a firm more efficient, right? I mean, if you've implemented those, you've seen that. But when they're connected to real human workflows, it should make your people's jobs easier, not more complicated. So if it's adding steps, big red flag. When it comes to evaluating what's worth investing in, oh, I'd say I like to start with a question, what problem are you trying to solve? Okay, so you can't clearly answer that. It's not time to buy. So, for example, if clients are calling for updates, maybe the problem isn't like we need new software. It's just maybe it's just a communication process that need to insert before they start calling, right? We just need to tighten that up. So, I think once that's fixed, you can look for a tool to make that repeatable or automatic, right? So, we also encourage firms to involve their teams in the decision. I think that people actually using the technology every single day should have the best insights into what's working and what's not. So I've seen too many investments made by attorneys that um, they've brought in tools that their staff ends up hating and either resenting or ignoring because it adds steps instead of removing them. So I'd say the best technology investments are the ones that align with your workflow. They reduce friction. They free up time for your team to do what humans do best, which is think critically, build relationships, serve your clients, do all those things really well.
It seems like common sense, but it's not always it's not always the case. That's why we need you.
I know. It does, but yeah.
And of course, systems alone don't grow a firm, but strategy does. Let's talk about the business side thinking that most personal injury firms tend to overlook. How can personal injury law firms apply business strategy principles like process optimization and financial forecasting to run more efficiently without compromising client care?
Yes, exactly. I think systems are only as strong as the strategy and the purpose behind them. So that's where a lot of firms get stuck. A lot of them start out focused entirely on case volume, client outcomes, which makes sense. I think that is also very logical thinking too, but they never step back to think like a business owner. So, what I mean by that is understanding how your firm runs operationally and financially, not just legally. So, for example, when we come into a firm, we'll often find that the attorneys know their average settlement values inside and out, which is great, but they don't have a clear picture of their true cost per case. So, things
Mhm.
like payroll, case expenses, marketing, even team time, like their capacity, their bandwidth. That all ties into profitability and sustainability. And when you can forecast those things and account for all that, it kind of makes you smarter, right? You can make smarter hiring decisions. You can make smarter investment decisions, investing in the right areas, and it prevents burnout, I think, too, before it starts. And so I'm thinking of one firm that I worked with that had grown really, really quickly. They had great marketing, really great results, but cash flow was constantly tight. And it didn't make sense. They're just like, I don't understand what's happening. And it was kind of like all over the board like this, right? And so once we mapped out their financial forecast alongside their case life cycle, we realized that their expenses were peaking months before our settlements were coming in. Just by restructuring the payment timing, adjusting Kalo distribution, they were able to relieve the pressure like almost immediately without cutting a single job. They didn't have to compromise client care and they saw a much straighter baseline of right their cash flow. So I think on the process side, optimization doesn't mean squeezing people harder. It's about removing that friction. So things like clearly defined handoffs, time tracking, templated communications, that can save hours a week per person.
Mhm.
And you know that
Mhm.
that adds up fast. So
Mhm.
when PI firms start thinking like CEOs, they start looking at data, forecasting ahead, refining their processes. I think they run so much more efficiently and they create much better client experiences in the end, which is what they want. So the truth is, clients feel better when a firm is more organized and more communicative and confident in their operations. So strategy and compassion can absolutely coexist. I think they actually strengthen each other.
I said, what's the difference between growth and scaling in the context of a personal injury firm, and why does understanding that distinction matters?
Ooh, okay. So that's such an important distinction. A lot of firms think that they're scaling when they're really just growing, and those are two totally different things. So growth is about like you're doing more cases, you have more clients, you have more revenue. It also means more people, more hours, more expenses, right? So you're increasing volume, but often in a way that's heavily dependent on the owner or a few key players holding everything together, right? And if you can identify with that, then you're growing. Okay. Scaling, on the other hand, it's about doing more with the same or fewer resources. So it's when your systems, your people, your processes, they're designed to handle more work without adding the same amount of stress or cost. It's when you know your business model is sustainable that way.
Mhm.
So when a firm, I think
Mhm.
when they start scaling intentionally, everything improves. Profitability, culture, client experience. The team isn't constantly playing catch up, right? So they're working within a framework that supports them and it doesn't drain them. So I think those are key indicators that you're scaling and not growing, or as you're growing, right?
I appreciate really
The difference.
appreciate you, Jamie, explaining this so well because a lot of times people, mix these two terms up totally. So that was very perfect, right to the point definition. Um, how do you set and track the right KPIs in a personal injury practice, especially when case cycles can be long and unpredictable?
Mm. Yeah, so I think that one actually comes up a lot, especially in legal, because you can't always measure progress in a neat, like 30-day cycle. We like to measure monthlies, and I think sometimes cases can take months or even years. So I think the key is to separate lagging indicators from leading indicators. I'll explain the difference between those two as well. So lagging indicators are the outcomes. Those are things like your settlements, your revenue, closed cases, things like that. Those are important, but they're the result of work that happened a long time ago. So leading indicators are what you can track right now. Those predict successes later. But those are things like response times, client satisfaction scores, how quickly demand packages are being sent out. So I think that not every KPI needs to be financial either. So we think of key performance indicators being a number, but I think in this line of work, client experience is everything too. So tracking things like average client response time or percentage of proactive updates, that gives you a clear picture of how well your form is communicating, which, by the way, is one of the biggest factors in repeat and referral business. So I think that last piece then is visibility. KPIs shouldn't live in spreadsheets that only the owner sees. Share them with your team when everyone understands what success looks like and can see the progress in real time. I think it creates accountability, first of all, but also motivation. And so when you have that transparent culture, I see it being a good thing. Even in long, unpredictable case cycles, if you're tracking the right leading indicators consistently, then you'll start to see patterns that help you forecast better. And like I was talking about before, you have more of a flat line cash flow cycle instead of that up and down all the time. And you're able to make better and smarter operational decisions.
For those who don't know, Jamie, what does KPI stand for?
Key performance indicators. So these are things that happen in your business that tell you something. That usually the owner or decision maker should be making decisions once they see what this is. So if you have like a client satisfaction score of 0 to 5, 0 being not good, 5 being excellent, and you're getting consistently ones, that is a key performance indicator that something is happening and you need to do something about it. So a lot of times KPIs are financial, profit margin numbers, things like that that you're used to seeing. We focus a lot on the monetary value, but that's what I was saying. There's a lot of operational things that you can measure that are also key performance indicators that will eventually tie to financials, but it can help you make decisions operationally right away.
Thank you. What's your approach to long-term strategic planning in an industry often driven by short-term case results?
Oh, yeah, you're right. I think personal injury world, it's very reactionary by definition, right? You're doing something because something else happened. On the business side, there's always another case coming in, another demand to get out, another client who needs attention. It's really easy to get stuck in the day to day and lose sight of the bigger picture. So I think my approach to long-term strategic planning actually comes from seeing what happens when you don't have one. So let me tell you what I mean by that. Early on, I worked with a firm that was thriving in terms of case wins, but every quarter felt like oh, we're starting all over again, like from scratch. So it didn't seem to be a rhythm. There was no vision behind getting the next case, and the attorney was exhausted. I mean, the staff turnover was high. Everyone felt like they were running a sprint that never ended, that type of pace. So that experience shaped how I think about strategy. I think that was a very influential time. So to me, long-term planning starts with clarifying your why, what you're building, who are you building it for a lot of firms I've been lucky enough to work with, it's not just about settlements. It's about justice, compassion, helping people get their lives back. And I'm sure we were with a lot of women in New Orleans when we met that were like that. And I've been blessed to be around those types of attorneys as well. So when you anchor your strategy to your mission, I think the decisions that you make about hiring, marketing, operations, they start to really align naturally. Then from there, it's about structure and cadence and, what you do day to day and that kind of stuff. So that falls into place later. So we do annual vision planning, quarterly goals, monthly or weekly check-ins, depending on the situation. And then that rhythm keeps you grounded. It's not about predicting the future. It's about being intentional with where you're headed even while you're dealing with the unpredictability of cases. So, honestly, long term strategy isn't about writing this 20-page business plan, which we can certainly do, right? We have that as a solution. We've certainly come in and helped people with that exercise. But it's about building habits that connect your daily actions to your bigger purpose. And if you're not clear on that direction, even success can start to feel chaotic. So, when you are intentional about it, then no matter how small, it feels like progress towards something meaningful.
But none of this that we just recently spoke about matters really if the people in the firm aren't thriving.
Mm, yeah.
Cultures often make or break factors. So let's dig into that. What does it really take for personal injury attorneys to build a sustainable firm culture that attracts and retains top talent in such a high pressure field?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Culture really is the make or break factor in a lot of law firms. And I've seen firms with incredible talent and strong case results completely lose momentum because the people behind the work were burnt out or disconnected or just not good, right? So I've also seen smaller, scrappier firms outpace everyone simply because they built a culture where people felt seen, they felt supported, and part of something bigger than themselves. So just what I was talking about. So I think for me, it always comes back to the question, do your people know what they do matters? In personal injury, especially, the work can be emotionally heavy. And you're hearing stories every day, you're juggling deadlines, you're fighting for justice. If leadership doesn't intentionally nurture the people doing that work, I think it really just takes a toll. So I think one of the most memorable moments for me was working with a firm where the owner admitted she hadn't slowed down to really connect with her team in months. We did something simple. We did a half day team retreat where everyone shared why they do this work. I mean, there was like tears, laughter, this collective reminder that they're not just processing cases, they're helping people rebuild their lives. So that shift in energy after that was incredible. And productivity went up, communication improved, retention stabilized, all because people really just felt that valued again. So building a sustainable culture starts with listening, clarity, and appreciation. Your firm might not need a retreat format like that to take a whole day and like be all, touchy-feely or whatever, but it worked for them. So as long as you can create space for honest conversation, set clear expectations so people can win at their jobs, celebrate the small wins and not just the verdicts. I think at the end of the day, culture isn't something that you just declare, it's something that you practice. So
Mhm.
when people feel trusted, informed, cared for, they'll pour that same care back into your clients, and that's what makes a firm sustainable.
So true. Thank you so much again, Jamie. How do you foster a culture of accountability and performance without falling into burnout or a billable hour mentality?
Well, we're in business because people are getting burnt out. So I think that's a question I should be able to answer. Every growing firm has to wrestle with that at some point. Because, yeah, accountability matters, but not at the expense of other people's health or humanity or even your own. So, the first thing I tell leaders is that accountability doesn't have to mean pressure. It means clarity. When people know exactly what success looks like in their role, how it's measured, how it connects to the bigger mission, you don't have to push them. They start to take ownership naturally. So people want to do good work, I find innately, if you're hiring the right people.
Mhm.
So they just need to know what good looks like to you and what that success looks like in your company. So I remember working with teams that had swung too far toward productivity metrics and every minute was tracked, every task was measured. It created this anxiety instead of alignment, and we reworked their approach and shifted the focus on how many hours did you bill to like, okay, how many clients move forward this week? Right.
Mhm.
And so they're more seeing like the people journey. So suddenly like, conversations weren't about the number side of it, which is what we're tracking, but it's more about like what impact am I making? So that small reframing built motivation instead of burnout, not changing the metric per se, but how we were framing it and how the conversations around it was changed. So I think the other piece is modeling balance from the top. If leaders, your firm, just like if you're a parent, you'll know this especially because your kids mirror you. And if you don't, then you'll see it in your staff team. If you are the owner, the leader, your team mirrors you. So if leaders are sending emails at midnight, never taking time off, the team assumes that's what's expected. You're sending a silent message that, the nonverbal cues of how your culture is. But when leaders show that it's okay to pause, to recharge, to have healthy boundaries like, hey, these are our work hours, then accountability becomes sustainable. And I'm not saying you have to change your workflow by any means. If working at midnight to do those emails works for you, I think that that's great. You can definitely do that. But thinking about how it's going to affect your staff team, because it will, is something that you need to be mindful of. So maybe you schedule that email to go out first thing in the morning. So you still do your workflow. That doesn't kind of affect your cadence or anything like that. But you can use your technology, leverage it to go out first thing in the morning and see if that makes a difference in when those communications are happening within business hours from the top, it changes that culture from within. So that's just an example. The goal isn't to create a culture of pressure, it's more to create a culture of ownership, one where people hold themselves, each other, just accountable because they care about the mission, not because they're afraid of missing a metric or trying to keep up. So when you lead from that place, I think performance and well-being can actually coexist, and that's when teams do their best work.
And what leadership qualities do you think are underrated but essential when running a personal injury firm in today's legal landscape?
Hmm. I actually love this question because I think there's so many leadership qualities that get talked about, right? Things like confidence, decisiveness, vision. I think all those matter. I'm a big fan of the girl boss, assertive, passion, all that kind of stuff. I think the ones that get underrated are empathy, humility, consistency. Empathy, because in a PI firm, you're not just managing cases, you're managing people, clients who are in pain, staff who are carrying that emotional weight every day. Being able to lead with understanding doesn't mean you're soft. It actually builds trust and loyalty. So when your team feels seen and supported, they'll go above and beyond for your clients. Humility, that's the other one. I've worked with incredible attorneys who are just brilliant in the courtroom, but also willing to admit when they don't have all the answers when it comes to running the business. And that willingness to learn, to ask for help, to bring in experts, I think you're listening more to your team. I think that's what sets great firms apart from the good ones. And
Hmm.
then consistency, right? Like I think people underestimate how much calm, steady leadership matters in a high stakes environment. So your team doesn't need perfection, they need predictability. They need to know who you are on a good day, who you are on a stressful day. It's all the same, right? That steadiness creates safety. Safety creates high performance. So to me, the most essential leaders today are the ones who lead with both their heart and their backbone. They can make hard decisions, but they do it in a way that honors their people. In a field of as demanding as personal injury law, that combination isn't just admirable. I think it's necessary to sustain long-term success.
Talking about personal injury law firms, but when we think of you, the Seeker Solutions, what one decision you made early on that had a surprisingly big impact on your firm's trajectory, and what would you do differently now with more experience?
Hmm. I think looking back, one of the best decisions I made early on was choosing to build with people, not just for people. So when I started Seeker Solution, I thought my role was to create tools, systems that would help other business owners. And it was. But what I didn't realize at the time was how much stronger the outcomes would be when I brought my team and my clients into my process. So instead of showing up as like, here we are, we have fractional services and we come in and we like handle everything for you. We have all the answers, right? Which we do, by the way. But that's that's not what I mean by that. I started sitting beside people. I started asking them questions, co-creating solutions that worked for them, that also were in alignment with our philosophies and our approaches on things. And we help them to build confidence in their own leadership. So I think that shift changed everything because not only did it deepen my relationships with them and with our, professional working environment, it created better results. And it's the reason we now have such long-term partnerships and clients that have worked with us for numerous years, especially with law firms who value trust and collaboration, right? So what I do differently now, honestly, I don't know. I maybe give myself permission to slow down a little sooner. In the early
Nice.
days, I equated momentum with progress and
Mm.
busyness with like it was like a badge of honor. I was always having something to do, and I thought if I wasn't moving fast, I wasn't moving forward. But what I've learned that growth isn't always loud. Some of the most impactful work happens in the pauses, in reflection, conversations, letting an idea or system evolve before rushing to the next thing. So I think that one decision to build with people, not just systems, shaped everything that came after. It's what makes the work fulfilling. It's what keeps our firm grounded on purpose instead of just productivity.
For personal injury attorneys looking to transform from being great lawyers to great firm leaders, what's the mindset shift they need to make first, in your opinion, Jamie?
Hmm. Yeah, that transition from being a great lawyer to becoming a great leader, it's one of the hardest, I think, and most important shifts that any attorney can make. So the first mindset shift is just realizing that your value isn't just in what you do anymore. Your value is also tied into how you lead others to do it well. So, most attorneys are trained to think if I want it done right, I do it myself. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs are that way too. That's why we get into this in the first place. We're good at what we do. We have a lot of success. We're usually right. And I don't think that that's a flaw. It's just like the facts, right? That's why we get into this. That works in the beginning. And I think it really helps us to launch our businesses. And that's a really great skill to have, but it does cap your growth and it burns you out very, very fast. So true leadership isn't about, you know, being able to do it yourself, right? It's about multiplication, not control. So trust your team, give them clear direction, create an environment where they can succeed without you having to touch every single file. I remember working with a managing attorney that said, I feel like I'm holding my firm together with duct tape. And I told him, well, that's because you're still trying to be the glue when your real job is to build the framework. And I think that shift is from being in the work to being overseeing the work, right? Developing your people, refining your systems, communicating vision. Everything changes when you do that. The
Mhm.
firm ran smoother, clients were happier. He actually had margin, in his life again. I think removing yourself from that bottleneck is key. The biggest mindset shift was moving from doer to developer. So that means you have to start asking yourself different questions. Instead of what needs to get done, it's more who can I get to solve this problem for us, right? Who can we empower to step into this role? And I think that's where leadership really begins. And when you can make that transition, then your team's going to be healthier. You're going to have better client experiences and more sustainable lives, I think, overall for themselves as well.
So true. And that wraps up this deep dive into what it takes to build a personal injury firm that actually lasts without sacrificing your people or your principles. If you are running or scaling a personal injury firm and you are feeling stuck in the weeds, take a step back and ask, what are your systems, your strategy, your culture, and are they all working for you, or are you just keeping things from breaking? What's your thought on these, Jamie?
Well, I think that's it. That's the heart of it. So many owners, they're running full speed, just trying to keep things from breaking. It's not because they're doing anything wrong, it's because they've outgrown the way that they've always done things. So the good news is that is a really great place to be. That's a good problem to have. So it means that there's room to evolve, to build systems that support you, a strategy that gives you clarity, and a culture that sustains your people as well. So when all that aligns, the work starts to feel lighter again. You get to lead with purpose instead of pressure. And that's what I love about the work that we do, helping leaders see that building a business that lasts doesn't have to come at the cost of their peace or the peace of their people as well. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
That's so great. Jamie, thank you so much again for talking to me today about some fresh thinking or
Yeah.
or actual practical ideas that we explored about the core elements of building a successful personal injury law practice, from sustainable growth strategies to retaining top talent without burning out. If you enjoyed listening to our story today, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who's building their firm the right way. But before we conclude today's episode, I have a fun pop-up question for you, Jamie. You ready?
I'm ready.
What are you not very good
Oh, a lot of things. But I'm not very good at, I would say, celebrating wins, especially if they're mine. I think how I was raised and just my personality type together with that. Um, I'm the type who like checks a box, I immediately move on to the next thing. It's something that I think I'm working on is like, yeah, this was actually a really big deal. Like let's celebrate it. And so I think, it's important for my team because some people really do need that, even if I don't. So for me, I just need to pause and actually acknowledge progress. Sometimes looking back can be really quite rewarding, and the small wins are what actually builds momentum. And I'm learning to kind of just slow down long enough to enjoy those wins before jumping back into what's next. I'd say that's one thing.
Well, Jamie, today you being on It's Time for More Injury Fun podcast, it calls for celebration. So please celebrate today. Take your time. Take at least 10 minutes to celebrate it, okay?
Yes, yes, definitely. And thanks for having me on. I think this was a wonderful conversation. I think it's one that so many firm owners really could benefit from as well.
Absolutely. That again was Jamie Seeker, founder and CEO of the Seeker solution based in Phoenix, Arizona, and servicing her clients nationwide. I want to thank you all for watching and listening to our episode today. For more tips and tricks on legal funding and personal injury law related topics, follow me, like, and subscribe to It's Time for More Injury Fund podcast on YouTube and all podcast platforms worldwide, and follow More Injury Funding on moreinjuryfunding.com. I can't wait to see you, my dear viewers and listeners, at my next upcoming episode. Tune in soon for our next guest. Until then, be well. Thank you.